My wife said where she went wasn't my business. Then at 2 a.m. her calls started flooding in. Emergency. Please answer. I'm scared. I read every text. Watched every call ring. Did nothing. She came home at 6 a.m., mascara streaked, heel broken. Found me eating breakfast. Why weren't you there? I took a sip of coffee. Your problems aren't my concern either. She told me her plans were none of my concern, said it right to my face before slipping out for yet another secret getaway with her wealthy boss. Then at 2:17 in the morning, my phone started lighting up with her calls, 18 of them back to back. I watched every single one go to voicemail. I read every frantic text she sent, every desperate plea for help, and I didn't lift a finger. That was the moment I made my decision. Mercy, forgiveness, being the stand-up guy, none of that was my concern anymore either. My name is Alex Carter, and what follows is the story of how I took apart two people's lives with the same cold precision I used to put up steel frames for skyscrapers. The slow-burning kind of rage, that's the one you have to watch out for. Not the kind that explodes in a flash and burns itself out. The calculating kind. The kind that doesn't react, it plans. That's exactly what was running through me the day I came home early from a month-long job out in Wyoming, flowers in hand, thinking I'd surprise Megan and maybe finally have that conversation about kids. What happened instead was I got the surprise of my life, and it wasn't anything close to good. I pulled my truck into the garage and just sat there for a second, and everything felt exactly right. The house we'd built together, the lawn we kept perfect, the beautiful suburban life we'd created in one of Denver's best neighborhoods. I grabbed my bag from the seat, already picturing the look on her face when she saw me. 7 years of marriage, and even with the distance my work sometimes created, I was sure about us. Rock solid. The kind of couple other people looked at with envy. I was dead wrong. The front door was already unlocked, which should have set off every alarm in my head. Megan obsessed over security. She checked the locks twice every night and had talked me into installing a $1,500 alarm system just the previous year because she said she felt vulnerable when I was away. Now I understood what she really needed it for, easy disabling. As I stepped into the entryway, my boots making no sound on the hardwood I'd laid myself, I heard something that stopped my blood cold. Laughter. Her laughter, but not the kind she ever used around me anymore. This was a different sound entirely. Unguarded, intimate, the sound of two people sharing a secret that had no business being shared. I stood right there in my own hallway, invisible inside my own home, while my wife casually mapped out her betrayal without a hint of shame. The other voice was smooth and self-assured, the kind of voice that comes from spending a lifetime getting exactly what it wants and never being challenged. They were in the living room, probably on the couch I'd hauled up 3 flights of stairs and assembled with my own hands, drinking wine my paychecks had bought, with time they'd stolen from me. Next Friday is perfect, Megan was saying, her voice carrying that warm, flirtatious energy I remembered from when we first started dating, the way she used to sound when she looked at me. Alex will be in Seattle at least 2 weeks, maybe longer if the project drags on like they always do. We can have the whole weekend at Silver Peak. I'll tell him it's some kind of client crisis that needs me there immediately. He'll buy it. He always does. The man laughed, a low, greedy sound. The kind of laugh that belongs to someone who takes whatever he wants and never pays the price. You're getting real good at this, Meg. Makes me wonder what else you've been keeping hidden. What other stories you've got polished to perfection. Don't even worry about it, Daniel, she said softly. I could hear the smile behind her words. Could see in my mind the way she'd be leaning into him, touching his arm the way she once touched mine. You're my only secret. My most thrilling, most expensive secret. My way out of the dull little life I've been living. They laughed together after that, and something inside me split open. Not shattered, cracked. Like a dam that's holding on by a thread, pressure building behind it, force accumulating, waiting for the moment when it finally gives way and takes everything downstream with it. I could have walked in right then. Could have confronted them, started screaming, thrown punches, become every cliché of the betrayed husband falling apart in his own living room. But I didn't. Because standing there in the shadows of my own home with my bag still clenched in both hands, I remembered something true about myself that years of playing the devoted husband had buried. I was a builder, yes, but I also knew how to tear things down. I'd demolished structures before raising better ones in their place. That's what this moment called for. Demolition first. I backed out of that house one careful step at a time, the military muscle memory from years ago taking over without me asking it to. Got back into my truck. Drove with perfectly steady hands to the Red Canyon Bar, where I knew my buddy James River would be a few drinks in by now. James and I had served together in Afghanistan. He'd saved my life on 2 separate occasions and once done something darker on my behalf without ever needing an explanation. He was the one person who would understand what I was about to become. The bar was exactly what I needed, dim and smoky despite the ban, full of people who'd seen too much and given up pretending otherwise. James was in his corner booth with a bourbon, those sharp eyes catching me the second I came through the door. He clocked everything before I even sat down. "You look like somebody just shot your dog," he said as I slid in across from him. "Except you don't own a dog." "So what happened?" I couldn't find the words right away. They were stuck somewhere between my chest and my throat like broken glass. Finally I got them out. "Megan is sleeping with her boss. They're in my house together right now. Probably in my bed." James didn't flinch or offer sympathy. He just nodded slowly, like he'd been bracing for this conversation for years. "How long have you known?" 20 minutes. Came home early. Heard them working out their next trip away. "And you walked out instead of putting him through the wall?" "Because I've got something better in mind," I said. And something in the way I said it made James smile. Not a warm smile. The smile of someone who recognizes their own kind. "I'm going to take them apart completely, financially, professionally, in every way that matters. I'm going to make them regret ever crossing paths with each other, ever crossing paths with me, ever waking up on the same planet I live on." James flagged the bartender for 2 more. "Tell me what you need." The following week was a masterclass in self-control that would have impressed my old drill sergeant. I played the part perfectly. Came home from the trip I'd supposedly been on, told a convincing story about delays and contractor issues. Kissed Megan on the cheek when she flinched just slightly at my touch. Noticed how she couldn't hold my eyes for more than a second. How her phone was always face down on every surface, always face down now. She was jumpy, constantly sneaking peeks at her screen with those quick, guilt-soaked glances that people think are subtle and never are. I watched her the way a scientist watches a specimen, noting every lie, every hollow smile, every mechanical laugh, every time she said she loved me while her phone buzzed with messages that lit her up in ways I hadn't seen in years. I never pushed. Never gave her the tears and accusations and big dramatic confrontation she'd probably imagined in her head. I was cold and methodical, quietly building a case she didn't even know was being built. James, using his military network and zero regard for legal niceties, ran professional surveillance. What came back made my stomach twist: photographs, timestamps exposing every lie she'd told, credit card receipts from hotel stays we'd never taken together. Daniel Hudson. 44 years old. CEO of Hudson Marketing Group. Married, 2 kids in private school, a net worth hovering around $40 million from what public records showed. My wife's boss. Pathetically, insultingly predictable. But here's what Megan had no clue about. What no one knew except my accountant Gerald and my attorney Lisa. 2 years back, right around the time Megan started pulling away, when the warmth left her eyes and our conversations turned into transactions, I'd started protecting myself. Not a conscious decision at first, just instinct. An animal sense that winter was coming and I needed to prepare. 15 years in construction and engineering had given me connections across 3 states, a reputation for finishing big jobs early and under budget, and skills that were always in demand. So I quietly built my own company, Carter Steel Solutions, structured through enough corporate layers that even a forensic accountant with a law degree would need a week and a flashlight to map it out. Custom metal fabrication for commercial construction, precision work that commanded premium rates. And business had exploded. $30 million in contracts already lined up, profits reinvesting faster than I could plan for. All completely invisible to Megan. She still thought I was just Alex the contractor, making decent money but nothing that would make her stay. She had no idea I was building an empire while she was building her lies. I spent hours behind my closed office door, supposedly working on estimates. What I was actually doing was documenting everything. Every dollar Megan spent. Every trip. Every emergency meeting that showed up as a hotel charge. James kept feeding me photos and recordings that made my hands shake, but I filed them away without blinking. Evidence. Ammunition. The bricks I'd used to knock down the life she thought was safe. I started catching details I'd chosen not to see before. The designer wardrobe that had appeared out of nowhere. The hours she spent getting ready for work versus the 30 seconds she gave me when she got home. The way she dropped Daniel's name into conversations constantly, like he was something special instead of a married man sneaking around on his own family. The obsessive mirror checking before she left each day, like she was performing for an audience that wasn't me. The tipping point came on a Tuesday night, 3 weeks after I'd first heard them together. I sat in the living room pretending to look at my laptop while she got ready to go out. She'd become bold lately, almost daring me to say something. The outfit she had on was stunning, All designer labels, a dress I'd never seen before that probably cost someone's rent payment. Paid for with money from our joint account I'd been quietly routing into my hidden company accounts. The irony was not lost on me. "I'm going out," she announced, taking one last look in the hallway mirror and turning slowly to make sure every angle looked right. For him. Her tone was sharp, testing me, hoping I'd push back so she could start a fight and use it to justify whatever she was doing in her head. I looked up from my screen, face completely blank, giving her nothing. "Where to?" She wheeled around and there was something in her eyes, guilt mixed with defiance mixed with contempt. "Where I'm going is none of your business, none of your concern, not your problem. Honestly, you've been impossible lately. So cold and checked out and buried in your work. Maybe if you actually paid attention to your own wife instead of running off to every project that comes along, I wouldn't need to find my own entertainment." The nerve of it. The absolute, breathtaking audacity of someone who's been cheating on you then turning it around to make you the reason, making you feel responsible for pushing them away. It almost made me laugh. Almost. Instead I nodded once, keeping my face flat and unreadable. "You're right," I said, my voice completely level. "It's not my business. Have a good night, Megan. Don't bother waiting up." She hesitated, clearly expecting fireworks, needing the drama and the tears to justify herself. But when I turned back to my laptop without another word, dismissing her like she was already a ghost, she grabbed her bag and left. The door slammed hard enough to knock a picture frame sideways on the wall. I sat alone in our beautiful home, counting to 100, letting the fury roll through me and then past me, until it settled into something colder and far more useful. Rage was hot and sloppy. What I had now was ice. Clarity. Intent. Then I picked up my phone and texted James, "It's time. Get everything ready. We move tomorrow." His reply came back instantly, "Been waiting for this. Both targets. No mercy." At 2:30 in the morning my phone started buzzing on the nightstand, that vibration unbearably loud in the dead quiet of the house. Megan's name flashed on the screen once, twice, 3 times, 4. I watched it ring from where I lay on top of the covers, propped on my pillow, wide awake, staring at the ceiling. Counting each missed call like keeping score. I'd been expecting this. Daniel Hudson was a predator, but underneath that he was a coward, the type who takes what he wants right up until there's actual risk involved, and then vanishes. Something had gone sideways on their little getaway, and now she needed me. Now she wanted the man she'd been betraying to ride in and fix whatever mess she'd made, to play the dependable rescue plan she'd always kept in her back pocket. I let it ring. Let her panic. Let her feel what it was like to desperately need someone who simply wasn't there. After the 4th call, the text started. "Alex, please. I need you. Emergency. Please answer." Then, "I'm scared. Where are you?" Then, with typos that gave away how shaken she was, "Please don't do this. I'm sorry. Please." I read every single one as they came in. Felt nothing but a cold, quiet satisfaction settling deep in my chest. Whatever was happening to her out there, she'd earned every second of it. She'd made her choices. Now she was living inside them. I powered off my phone and went to sleep, the deepest, most peaceful sleep I'd had in months. She stumbled back in around 6 the next morning, just as daylight was starting to color the sky. Mascara tracked down her face in dark streaks, one of her expensive Louboutin heels snapped clean off and hanging at a broken angle, the red sole catching the light like something wounded. Her dress was torn at the shoulder. She looked like the night had chewed her up and spit her back out. And when she walked into the kitchen and found me calmly eating breakfast, something between relief and terror moved across her face. "Alex," she said, and her voice was raw from crying or screaming or both. "I called you over and over. Why didn't you pick up? Why weren't you there?" I looked at her over my coffee mug, took my time, let the silence do its work, took a slow sip before answering. "The coffee was excellent. You made it pretty clear that where you were going was none of my business. So I figured where you were when you needed help wasn't my business either." Seemed consistent. I paused, watching it land. "Tough night? You don't look great." Her face ran through a whole cycle of emotions before landing on barely leashed fury. "You bastard. You absolute bastard. I could have been hurt. I could have been in real danger. Something terrible could have happened to me and you just sat there ignoring my calls. And yet here you are," I said calmly, another sip of coffee, the same tone you'd used to talk about the weather. "Alive. Unharmed. Standing in our kitchen, having managed completely without my help. Funny how that worked out. Makes you wonder what else you've been managing without my knowing." She opened her mouth to go at me again, but I was already on my feet, grabbing my keys off the hook, walking past her without so much as a glance. "I've got a meeting. Important one. Don't wait up. I paused at the door and looked back at her for just a moment. You might want a shower, Megan. You smell like someone else's cologne. The meeting was with Lisa Martin, the most feared divorce attorney in the state of Colorado. Her reputation arrived before her like a weather front. Her downtown office was all glass and chrome and hard angles, which suited her perfectly. When I sat down across from her and laid out everything I had, the documentation, the evidence James had gathered, all of it, she smiled. Not a warm smile. The smile of a shark that just picked up a scent. Alex, she said, leaning back in her chair and pressing her fingertips together, I've spent 20 years in family law. I've heard it all. Every betrayal, every story, every excuse. But what you've brought me today, she gestured at the spread of folders across her desk, this is extraordinary. A cheating spouse entangled in corporate fraud, a compromised executive with a trail of harassment settlements, and a client who actually had the foresight to document everything and protect his own assets. You're not just a victim here. You came prepared to fight. And I'm going to make sure you win. We worked through the afternoon and into the evening, ordering in food, going through every piece of evidence like military strategists, the secret company, the separate accounts, every cent Megan had spent and every trip she'd taken and every lie she'd told. James had done remarkable work, photos that made Lisa raise her eyebrows, recordings that pulled a low whistle from her, timestamp documentation that built an airtight case for systematic, deliberate betrayal. But Lisa always wanted more. That's what made her the best. This Daniel Hudson, she said, pulling up everything she could find on him, fingers moving fast across her keyboard. He's had complaints before. 3 harassment claims in 5 years, all buried under NDA agreements paid out of company funds. His books have some creative entries that I'm certain the SEC would find fascinating. If we can dig deep enough, if we can tie Megan directly to his financial crimes, we don't just end a marriage. We end 2 careers, 2 reputations, 2 lives. We don't just divorce them. We dismantle them. Perfect, I said, and my voice had no warmth in it whatsoever. That is exactly what I'm after. I want them to lose it all, the way they tried to take everything from me. This is going to get messy, Lisa said, looking at me seriously. Mutual friends will pick sides. People will have opinions. Your personal life becomes a public story. Are you truly ready for that? Because once we start, there's no pulling back. This is scorched earth, Alex. I thought about Megan's face the night she said my concerns weren't her problem. Thought about the 2 of them laughing on my couch in my living room while I was away working to support them both. Thought about her desperate calls I'd let ring in the dark. Thought about every lie she'd sold me so smoothly I'd started to doubt my own memory. I'm not just ready, I told Lisa. I'm looking forward to it. Let them see. Let everyone see exactly what comes back around when you betray someone who knows how to fight. Getting to Daniel Hudson directly was the next step, not to start something messy, but to fire a warning shot across the bow. To let him understand that the game had shifted, that he wasn't dealing with some oblivious husband anymore. He was dealing with someone who'd been trained for combat and didn't believe in doing things halfway. Using James's contacts and my knowledge of building systems and security layouts, I walked straight into Hudson Marketing Group dressed as a maintenance worker, worn toolbox, official-looking clipboard, a uniform that made me invisible to anyone who passed. Nobody looks twice at the repairman. I learned that years ago on job sites, confidence and purpose are the best disguise you can wear. Daniel's office was exactly what you'd expect from a man who mistakes expense for substance. $50,000 desk. Italian leather on every surface. Art on the walls that looked like it cost a fortune and meant absolutely nothing. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Denver, the kind of view that signals power to people who need that kind of signal. Daniel himself was on a call when I walked in, leaned back with his feet on the desk like he was the only important person on earth. The confusion on his face when he registered me would have been funny if I were in any mood to find it funny. He wrapped up his call fast, switching from confusion to irritation. Who are you? You can't be in here. I'm calling security. I closed his door behind me slowly, then crossed to his desk at my own pace and set a flash drive down next to his keyboard with a soft, deliberate click. My name is Alex Carter, I said, quiet and perfectly steady. I believe you're well acquainted with my wife. Megan. Quite intimately, in fact. Every drop of color left his face at once. He tried to recover, pasting on a calm he clearly didn't feel. I have no idea what you're referring to. I think you have me confused with someone else. I held up one hand to stop him. Don't. We're both too intelligent for that. On that drive, photographs of you and Megan across 4 different hotels over 3 months. Recordings of your phone conversations laying out your plans in detail. Time-stamped videos of you coming and going from those hotels on the exact days she told me she was working. Credit card records showing who paid for the rooms. Transcripts of over 3,000 text messages between your personal phone and hers. Emails where you two discuss not just your affair, but also confidential material she forwarded from my own private files. Every piece of it documented and organized in a way that would make any prosecutor in this state weep with gratitude. On that same drive is 7 years of your company's financial history, the offshore accounts and the Caymans you kept off the books. The shell company contracts you've been awarding yourself. The harassment settlements you paid out using company funds. The insider trading patterns. All of it. Meticulously documented. I've been very thorough, Daniel. Now he was genuinely frightened, that wall of arrogance finally crumbling. What do you want? Money? You want to be paid? Name a number. I could have laughed at how predictable it was. This has nothing to do with money. I'm not here to cut a deal. I'm here to give you a choice, one time, so pay attention. You can walk away quietly. End things with Megan immediately. Take the professional fallout heading your way without trying to drag her down harder than necessary. Cooperate when the time comes. And maybe, I keep the worst of what I know to myself. Maybe you just lose the corner office and the reputation instead of your freedom. And if that's not what I do? He asked, reaching for bravado and coming up short. I leaned forward over his desk, close enough that he had nowhere to look but at me. Then I reduce your entire world to rubble. The company, the reputation, the marriage, the freedom, everything. I make sure every partner, every client, every reporter in this city knows your full story. I make sure your wife learns about your other women, because Megan isn't the first, is she? I make sure your children find out who their father actually is. I show up and testify against you in person. I spend every cent I have ensuring you never work in this industry again. And that's before I hand it all over to the authorities and let them pick through what's left. Are we clear? I straightened up, picked up the empty toolbox, and headed for the door. I stopped with my hand on the frame. One more thing, if you warn Megan, if you try to get ahead of this or coordinate with her in any way, I'll know immediately. I have people watching you. Serious people. And I'll treat it as a declaration of war. Trust me when I say you do not want that. I learned from professionals. The door clicked shut behind me, and I walked out of that building knowing I'd just lit the fuse on something that was going to level everything they'd built together. Now I just had to wait for the blast. Patience was never a problem for me when the outcome was worth it. Megan grew more desperate by the day after that, like a creature that senses the trap tightening but can't figure out which direction the danger is coming from. She worked through every tool she had, dressed up in lingerie I hadn't seen in years, which I deflected with polite neutrality, picked fights over my distance, which I answered with nothing but calm, cried and apologized past the point where it could have mattered, which left me completely cold. She couldn't understand what had changed, why the patient, forgiving Alex she'd counted on for years had been replaced by this stranger who looked at her like she was already gone. She started trying to get into my finances, my email, my phone, growing increasingly frantic when she found every door locked, every password changed, every path blocked. IT professionals had helped me seal everything down tight. Every dead end she hit made her more erratic. I could see the panic building behind her eyes. The realization that whatever control she thought she had was gone, and she had no idea how to get it back. One afternoon I came home early on purpose to find her in my home office, digging frantically through a drawer of files. Fake files I'd deliberately placed and left unlocked, showing a business hemorrhaging money, debts I didn't owe, accounts that didn't exist, loans in free fall. When she looked up and found me standing in the doorway watching her, she didn't even bother pretending. The desperation had burned past shame. "What is going on, Alex?" she demanded, papers in her hands like she was holding evidence. "Where did the money go? Why is everything locked down? Why can't I access anything?" "I don't know what you mean," I said, perfectly innocent. "Everything is fine. Right where it should be." "Don't lie to me," she shouted, losing what was left of her composure. "My card got declined at Nordstrom today. You know how humiliating that was? The bank told me you moved everything into business accounts I'm not on. They said the house is in your name alone. When did that happen? What did you do?" "My company needed investment capital," I said, keeping my shrug casual. "Big growth opportunity. I'm sure it'll sort itself out, nothing you need to worry about." Her eyes narrowed and I could see the calculations running. "What company? Since when do you have a company? You're a contractor. You work for other people." "Since I started taking my future seriously," I said evenly, letting her own words come back to her. "You told me to pay more attention to my work, right? Stop being so predictable. Build something real. I'm just taking your advice, Megan. Being less boring. Building an empire while you were busy building your lies." She stared at me like she was meeting me for the first time. Maybe she was. The man she'd learned to walk all over, the one who apologized reflexively, absorbed her criticism without pushing back, bent himself into whatever shape she needed, was gone. Standing in his place was someone she couldn't read, couldn't manage, couldn't even begin to understand. And that terrified her more than anything else could have. "You're punishing me," she said, and her voice had gone quiet. "You know something." "What do you know?" "No," I said, keeping my voice even and cold. "I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting myself. Those are two completely different things." The final confrontation, the one I'd been orchestrating for weeks the way a conductor shapes every note before the performance, happened at Silver Peak Resort. James had intercepted an email Daniel carelessly sent from a work account giving me the exact dates. I booked my own room under a different name, paid cash, and left no footprint behind. I wasn't going up there to catch them in the act, that moment had passed. I went because I needed to finish this face to face, in the place where they felt safest. I drove up into the mountains alone on a Friday afternoon, winding roads cutting through thick pine, glimpses of snow-capped peaks between the trees. The resort was exactly the kind of place Megan loved, polished and exclusive and priced so high that regular people only ever read about it. 5-star dining, a spa with treatments that cost more than car payments, suites with views that belonged on magazine covers. All of it probably running through Daniel's company account, since Megan's personal credit had been quietly cratered by my very deliberate management of our shared finances. Getting into their suite was almost insulting in how simple it was. $50 to a housekeeper with no curiosity, and I had a key card and a room number. I waited until evening, until the last light was dying behind the mountains, until I knew they'd have settled in with their drinks and their guard fully down, feeling untouchable inside their bubble. Then I walked through their door like I'd paid the bill. They were out on the balcony, backlit by the last of the sunset, champagne catching the final light, looking like a scene from a luxury travel ad. Megan in a stunning black dress I'd never seen, bought for exactly this occasion with money she assumed was still partly hers. Daniel had his arm around her waist with the casual ownership of someone who thinks he's already won. They looked like people who'd never faced a consequence in their lives. "Hell of a view," I said from the doorway, and my voice cut right through whatever moment they were sharing. Megan's glass slipped from her fingers and shattered across the balcony tiles, champagne spreading like something spilled at a crime scene. Daniel spun around fast, face moving through shock, then anger, then something that looked a lot like fear. "Alex," Megan breathed, her voice barely forming the word. "What are you doing here? How did you find us?" I walked into the suite at my own pace, taking stock of everything around me with unhurried appreciation. Egyptian cotton sheets on a king-sized bed. A hot tub on the balcony. Vintage champagne in an ice bucket. Just wanted to see where my money was going. Where my wife's time was disappearing to. Nice choice. Very tasteful. Is that the Dom Perignon 08? Excellent selection. I hear it pairs well with broken vows and borrowed time. Daniel stepped forward, positioning himself between us, trying to summon the executive authority he used in conference rooms. "Get out. Now. This is private property. I will call security." I smiled at him, and there was nothing friendly anywhere in it. "What you need to do, Daniel, is stop talking and start listening. Because right now, as we're having this conversation, emails are being delivered to every member of your board detailing 7 years of financial crimes. By the time the sun comes up, you'll be terminated, under federal investigation, and looking at criminal charges that carry real prison time." The blood left his face like a light being switched off. "You're lying. You don't have anything." "Already sent," I said, glancing at my watch. "About 43 minutes ago. Lisa Martin doesn't do anything halfway. I'd check your phone. Something tells me it's having a very eventful evening." He grabbed his phone with shaking hands, and what he found there wrecked him. Notification after notification from board members, lawyers, partners, everyone scrambling at once. He kept scrolling, hoping it would stop, and it didn't. I watched the arrogance drain out of him in real time. Megan found her voice and it came out desperate and high-pitched. "Alex, can we just talk? The two of us, alone? We can work through this. Talk?" I turned to face her, and whatever she saw when she looked at my eyes made her step back. "The way we talked when you told me where you were going wasn't my concern? Or all those other times you looked me in the face and lied, about late nights, about business travel, about loving me, about keeping your vows?" "I do love you," she said, and tears started cutting through her makeup. Real ones, maybe. I no longer had the energy to care either way. "You love what I provided," I said flatly. "You love the house and the income and the fallback plan. The actual human being named Alex, the man you made vows to, him you never loved. Because love doesn't coexist with what you've done. Love doesn't look like this. Love requires basic respect. And you never had that for me. Not once in 7 years. Daniel had recovered enough of himself to try one more lunge. You think you're righteous? The hero? You're just a bitter man who couldn't hold his wife's attention, inadequate in every way that counted. I crossed the room before I even made the decision to move, grabbed him by the collar of his expensive shirt, and put him flat against the wall hard enough to rattle the framed art. I got my face close to his and dropped my voice almost to a whisper, and somehow that was more frightening than shouting. I could finish you right here and make it look like an accident. But that would be too fast. Too easy. Too merciful. I want you to watch your life come apart slowly. I want you to lose the company, the title, the freedom, the family, every single thing, one piece at a time. And I want you to remember me every single day you spend in prison. I want you to remember the man you thought wasn't worth worrying about. I let him go. He slid against the wall, every bit of fight gone, just a frightened man in an expensive suit that didn't fit the moment. I turned to Megan and pulled a folder from inside my jacket, dropping it onto the coffee table with a sound like a gavel. Divorce papers. Already filed. Already processed. You're walking away with nothing. Zero. The house is in my name, has been since before we married. Smart move, in hindsight. The car, the investments, the savings, the retirement accounts, all mine. You'll leave with whatever's in your personal checking, which was sitting at about $3,000 last I checked. That's not legal, she said, but her voice had no strength behind it. Community property. I have rights. Already done, I said pleasantly. Lisa Martin is handling it. You should find your own attorney, though I'll warn you, most reputable ones won't touch this case once they look at the details. You're being investigated for conspiracy to commit fraud, industrial espionage, and money laundering. Forwarding confidential documents from my files to your boss's competitors, that's a federal crime. Helping structure illegal offshore accounts, also a federal crime. Opening accounts in my name without my authorization, identity theft. You've been busy, Megan. Busier than I ever knew. Her legs gave out and she sat down hard on the couch, her perfect dress wrinkling, her mascara running in dark rivers down her face. I never meant for any of this to happen. I finished for her. But it did happen. And now both of you get to live inside what you built. I headed for the door. One more pause, one more turn. You remember that night you called me at 2 a.m? All those calls in a row? All those texts begging me to respond? I was in bed. Phone right beside me. I read every message as you sent them. And I made the deliberate choice to do nothing. To let you panic. To let you feel abandoned and ignored, because you had told me, in no uncertain terms, that where you went and what you needed and who you turned to were none of my business. I simply took your advice. I applied your philosophy. Turned out it worked just fine. The look on her face in that moment, the full weight of it landing all at once, was worth every sleepless hour I'd spent getting to this point. I walked out of that suite and drove back to Denver with the windows down and the music up, feeling lighter than I had in years. Like I could finally fill my lungs all the way. What followed was a spectacularly satisfying collapse. Daniel's company imploded within days. The board voted unanimously to remove him without severance. Criminal charges came fast after that, SEC investigations, IRS warrants, the whole machinery of consequence rolling over him at once. His wife filed for divorce immediately and took what she could before the legal battle stripped everything bare. Smart woman. Megan tried to contest the divorce. Borrowed money from her parents to hire an attorney, but going up against Lisa Martin with borrowed money was like bringing a kitchen knife to a gunfight. Her attempt to rally friends around her ran straight into the wall of social media. News about the affair and the federal investigation had already spread. The dinner party crowd suddenly stopped returning her calls. What I hadn't anticipated, what genuinely caught me off guard even though it probably shouldn't have, was how fast Daniel turned on her. When prosecutors showed up with plea offers tied to cooperation, he opened up completely. Gave them everything. Threw Megan so far under the bus she left a shadow. It was her, he told investigators, told lawyers, told anyone with ears. She manipulated me. She seduced me. She was the source, forwarding her husband's confidential information, suggesting the offshore structures, helping design the illegal transactions. She was the architect. I was just going along with what she'd set in motion. Megan hadn't seen that coming at all. The man she'd burned her life down for turned on her without blinking. Her attorney called my attorney begging for contradicting testimony. I laughed and hung up. She was on her own. The investigators found hundreds of emails she'd sent Daniel, forwarding documents I'd deliberately left accessible in my home office once I knew what she was doing. Financial projections, contract details, competitive intelligence. Months of it, all time-stamped, all provable. What she'd done had long since crossed the line from an affair into something considerably more serious. The day her criminal charges were filed, I was in Lisa's office signing the final divorce papers. Lisa's phone rang mid-signature, and the smile that spread across her face when she hung up told me everything before she said a word. "My contact at the DA's office," she said, barely containing herself. "Conspiracy to commit fraud, industrial espionage, money laundering, identity theft. If she's convicted on all counts, 10 to 15 years federal, possibly more if they add RICO." I signed the last page and nodded. "Daniel is facing 20 to 30, Lisa added. "Fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, tax evasion, obstruction." His plea deal collapsed when they caught him lying too many times. His lawyers are in full panic mode. It's genuinely beautiful. The house felt different once I changed the locks. Like it had been holding its breath for years and could finally let go. I brought in contractors to gut Megan's walk-in closet and turn it into a home gym, convert her bathroom into a sauna, strip her office down to the walls and build a library in its place. Every last trace of her was removed, donated, given away, or in some cases simply destroyed because the satisfaction was worth more than whatever it would have sold for. 3 weeks later it was as if she'd never set foot in the place. James came by one evening with a bottle of Macallan 25, the good stuff, reserved for moments that actually meant something. We sat out on the back deck watching the sun go down over the mountains in brilliant shades of orange and deep purple. Neither of us said much. We didn't need to. He knew what it had cost me to get here. "You did what needed doing," he said finally, pouring us both a generous measure. "I know," I said. Not a single regret. 2 months after the divorce closed, Carter Steel Industries won its biggest contract yet, $65 million to supply custom metalwork for a new NFL stadium in Phoenix. Success, it turned out, was the most satisfying form of revenge available. While Daniel and Megan's worlds dissolved, mine was climbing to heights I hadn't planned for. 80 new employees. Offices in 5 states. Fortune 500 companies calling because they wanted to work with someone they could trust. 6 months out from the divorce, on a cold November evening that smelled like the first snow was coming, someone knocked on my door. I opened it to find Megan standing there, barely recognizable as the woman I'd spent 7 years married to. The designer clothes were gone. Worn jeans, a cheap jacket, hair limp around a face that had aged a decade in less than a year. Dark circles carved deep under her eyes. She looked like she'd been broken down to the frame. "Alex," she said, and her voice cracked on the single syllable. "Please. Just 5 minutes." I stood in the doorway without moving back. 2 minutes. Starting now. She looked past me into the house, into what used to be hers, and I could see the tears forming. "I've lost everything. My job, my apartment, they repossessed my car. My friends won't talk to me. The trial starts next month and my attorney says I'm probably going to prison for 8 to 12 years. Daniel's legal team is painting me as the mastermind who engineered the whole thing and used him. Everything is gone, Alex. All of it. And you want what from me exactly?" My voice was somewhere below freezing. "Sympathy? Money for a better lawyer? A character witness? I want you to tell them the truth," she said, reaching toward me but not quite making contact. "Tell them I didn't understand what Daniel was doing. Tell them I was just having an affair and had no idea about the fraud. Tell them I was a victim too." I let out a short, harsh laugh. "That would be a lie, wouldn't it? You knew exactly what you were doing when you forwarded my documents. You knew what those offshore structures were. You helped open accounts in my name without my knowledge. You weren't an innocent bystander, you were a willing participant. An active one." "I was in love," she shouted, desperation cracking into anger. "I wasn't thinking straight. He told me we had a future together. Told me I was special. Told me he'd leave his wife and we'd build a life. I was stupid. I was wrong. But I don't deserve prison for falling for someone." "You were in love," I repeated, tasting each word. "So that's your defense. You destroyed our marriage, helped commit federal crimes, hurt everyone around you, but you were in love, so it shouldn't count. That's what you're going with." She dropped to her knees right there on my front step, grabbing both my hands with both of hers. "Please, Alex. Please. I will do anything. Pay you back however long it takes. Work for you. Sign whatever you need. I cannot go to prison. I won't survive it. Please." I looked down at her, this woman I'd once stood before and made promises to that I'd meant with everything I had. I remembered her laughing with Daniel in my own living room. Remembered her telling me my concerns weren't her problem. Remembered her calls ringing in the dark while I lay there and let them. Remembered every lie, every humiliation, every quiet moment she'd made me question my own sanity. I pulled my hands back and stepped away from her grip. You made your choices, Megan. Now you live with them. Same as I'm living with mine. You're really going to stand there and let me go to prison? She whispered. I'm not letting you do anything, I said, flat and final. You did this to yourself. Both of you. I only made sure you actually faced the consequences instead of buying your way out of them the way people like you usually do. I made sure accountability happened. That's all I did. I loved you, she said, her final card, played face up on the table. I know I didn't show it the way I should have. I know I hurt you badly. But I did love you once. And I think somewhere underneath all of this, part of you still loves me too. Otherwise, why would any of this hurt? I looked at her for a long moment, really looked, and felt absolutely nothing stir in the place where something used to live. You're wrong. I don't love you anymore. I don't hate you either. I don't feel anything for you at all. You're just a lesson now, a reminder of what happens when you mistake someone patient and principled for someone who'll never push back. Her face collapsed and she began sobbing, shaking, broken sobs that she couldn't control. Please, Alex. I have nowhere else to go. No one left to ask. You are the only option I have. No, I said, and it landed like a door closing. I'm not your option. I'm not your fallback. I'm not your husband. I'm just the man whose life you tried to dismantle, and the man who's walking back inside while you go face what you deserve. You're cruel, she spit, the grief curdling into something sharp. You're vindictive and hollow, and I hope you know that what you did to me, what you're doing right now, is worse than anything I ever did to you. You're a monster. I felt my jaw tighten. Felt heat flare for just a fraction of a second before the ice reasserted itself. You want to talk about cruel? You cheated on me for months. You brought him into our home while I was away making money that supported both of us. You helped him steal from people. You told me my feelings weren't your problem. And when you needed someone in the middle of the night, I did to you precisely what you had been doing to me all along. I treated you like you didn't matter. Because to me, by then, you didn't. You stopped mattering the moment you decided I wasn't worth your loyalty. I started closing the door and she grabbed the frame with both hands. I'll tell everyone what you did, how you engineered the whole thing, how you trapped us, how you manipulated every piece of this. I'll make sure everyone knows who you really are. Go ahead, I said easily. Tell them how I protected myself from a cheating spouse and a corrupt executive. Tell them how I documented the crimes and handed the evidence to the proper authorities. Tell them how I made sure actual justice happened. I'm sure that'll really help your case. Her hands dropped from the doorframe. All of it gone out of her at once. I hate you, she whispered. Good, I said. Now you know how it feels. Now we're square. I closed the door. Turned the deadbolt. Listened to her footsteps and her crying fade as she made her way down the driveway and out of my life. Then I walked to the living room, poured a drink, and sat down in the quiet of my home. My phone buzzed. James, saw her leave. You okay? I typed back, better than okay. It's done. Megan went to trial 4 months later. The evidence against her was overwhelming enough to bury any hope she had. Daniel testified against her under oath, cutting her loose at every opportunity to carve a few years off his own sentence. She was convicted on 7 of 9 counts and sentenced to 9 years in federal prison. Daniel received 22. Their great romance, that thrilling, world-burning love affair they thought justified everything, had lasted exactly 7 months. 7 months that cost both of them everything they had and everything they would ever have. Meanwhile, Carter Steel Industries kept climbing. 120 new employees. Offices in 8 states and 2 Canadian provinces. A downtown penthouse with views that made Daniel's old office look ordinary. I started seeing a structural engineer named Rachel, someone who heard my whole story and didn't blink, who understood that sometimes good people do hard things just to survive. 2 years after the divorce was finalized, we got married quietly, surrounded by people who actually knew us. No drama. No complications. Just 2 people deciding to build something real. When Megan's sister reached out years later asking if I'd write a character reference for a parole hearing, I declined. Politely but without ambiguity. Some things that get burned down were never meant to be rebuilt. Some decisions carry permanent weight. Some people spend their first chance like it cost them nothing, and that's why there isn't a second one. Standing on my penthouse balcony with Rachel beside me, company thriving, future wide open, I raised my glass one last time, not to forgiveness, not to closure, not to moving on,